It is really good to be here. Good morning. Like Dan said, I'm from Homestead, and one thing he said was, "It sure is fun to get old." I'm like, "Yeah, really? Really? How many people think that?" It's okay. I'm not getting kids up in the middle of the night anymore, so that's a good thing to know. What qualifies me to be here? I want to talk to you today about family caregivers. Caregivers that are taking part of their life to take care of some senior in their life, whether it be a parent, whether it be a spouse, aunt, uncle, any of those kinds of things. That's what I'm here to talk to you about. What qualifies me? I've experienced it. I've been there, I've done that, and every day at Home Instead, we talk to someone that's a family caregiver. So I'm very, very passionate about that. I wanted to tell you a little history about myself. Dan mentioned that I've been in senior care since I was 19 years old, which, yes, is a very long time ago. This year I was very blessed to get my little red, white, and blue card. So, there's good things about that, and there's really trying things about that. I'm married to Mike, who has also been in senior care for many, many years, our entire married life, which is also very long, and I'm very, very proud of that. We have two beautiful daughters that are old enough now to try to boss us around. They have chosen wonderful husbands, and I have 3 delightful little granddaughters and 1 2-month-old grandson, finally a boy in our family. Family is very important, and we all know that. And that brings me to talking about family caregivers. In the senior care business, it's pretty natural that we are taking care of seniors. We are taking care of those 60, 70, 80-year-old seniors, whether they 90, 100-year-old seniors, whether they're still in their home, whether they're in a senior community, whether they're in assisted living, whether they're in a nursing home. We are engaged in taking care of older people and absolutely are honored to be able to do that. But for me, we're taking care of those daughters out there. And I use the word daughters pretty generically because there's lots of sons involved. There's lots and lots of spouses involved. But I like to refer to daughters. So when I say that, that's what I mean. And I'm kind of talking about me. Let me give you an example. My mom was diagnosed with Parkinson's. My dad, even though they were retired and lived in town, Dad never retired. He worked right up until the day he got too sick to work. But he was a farmer. So Mom was in the kitchen. She didn't want him any part of the household. He couldn't do anything in the house. He couldn't, and she didn't want him to. And he was in charge of outside. He would literally come in, sit down at the table, and expect the food to be on the table. And I am so grateful that the generations have changed that theory. But that's how they lived. So Mom started having some physical issues, some shaking, which we pretty much managed by medication, some balance issues. That really wasn't much of a problem. But she started having some memory loss, and that became more of a problem. And I saw them go into action. They both realized what was happening. So Dad started learning. Dad would start making the meals. Mom would sit at the counter and coach, kind of give him instructions on what to do. And what she did mostly was tell him what he did wrong, but, he was learning at the same time. So Dad learned to cook. He made all the meals. He baked. He bragged about his phenomenal apple pies, and they were delicious. He cleaned the bathrooms. He was a farmer. He could do anything, and now he turned into the household person that could do anything very well. One time I was there, Dad was vacuuming the living room, and my mom just winked at me and pointed out there, because he was literally moving the couch and vacuuming behind the couch, and all of us women know you just don't have to do that every time. So he did a great job of learning. And they did an amazing job together. They continued their life. My dad was very social, so they continued to go places even though Mom needed help and guidance in doing that. And that continued for several years until it didn't. Until I noticed my dad becoming short with me. Don't you think I'm taking good enough care of her whenever I would make any suggestion on something that might work a little better? But most disturbing, he became very short with Mom. Marlene, you know better than that. Can't you just listen to me? And then maybe pulling her up out of the chair was a little more than it should have been. And walking with her down the steps was a little faster than it should have been. He was tired. He was tired and burnt out. No one should have to be 24/7 care for another person in their life. Dad was Dutch, pretty stubborn. He wouldn't admit that he couldn't do that. Till death do us part. This is my job. So things didn't go so well those last few months. The story doesn't end horribly. I did eventually convince him to get some help into the home, and that made a huge difference. Just the fact that he could go have coffee with his buddies and he could go to the basketball games again made a huge difference. Mom stayed at home until, as I wished, she no longer knew that that was actually her home. And then we did move her to a facility, and she had a few wonderful months in a beautiful facility. My point was, Dad was a wonderful caregiver until he wasn't. So what can we do about that? First thing I suggest is talk early. Talk early. And, my kind of emphasis is to those, we talk about a 40-70 rule, where if you're 40 years old and you know someone that's 70, start these conversations. We all know about healthcare power of attorney and getting signatures on bank cards and all of those kind of things. Those things are a no-brainer. Getting your will updated, all of that's a no-brainer. But what about when we can't drive anymore? Or what about where would I like to live? Questions like, Dad, if we hear from the neighbors that there's been some mailboxes bumped into, or we see some scratches on the side of the doors of the garage, what do you want us to do? If you have those conversations while the 70-plus-year-old can still be a part of those decisions, it's so much easier. Then when it comes to the point that Dad isn't driving so well, you can say to him, you told me that when this happens, you want the Cadillac to go to our nephew. And it makes that conversation much easier. You guys told me that when it becomes too difficult to do all these stairs, we first want to make these adjustments, and then, if necessary, you want to move to that beautiful community in town. That makes those conversations easier. Now, the 40-70 rule flips. If you happen to be over 70 and your kids refuse to talk about this, and it happens a lot. Mom, you're doing great, you're healthy, I don't want to talk about this. We're going to have lots of years together yet. Us kids kind of feel that way. Well, I used to be the kid, now I'm getting on the other side of that. We kind of feel that way. You need to set those kids down and act like you feel that they're still 16 years old and they're your kid and they need to listen to you. You need to sit them down and say, I want to talk to you about these things. This is what I want you to do with my car. I do want to stay here, but I don't want to put a lot of pressure on you guys. So these are what we need to think about if I can't be alone all the time. Or I do want to move to Whitefish on the Lakes. This is what I want. So set those kids down and make sure they know your wishes on those little daily detail things. I talk about this a lot. I was horrible at it. I couldn't do it with my parents. One thing I found easier was when they talked about what their friends were doing. Then I could bring that conversation in about how do you feel about that. Okay, I'll take too much of your time if I just keep going on and on. Another thing we need to do is either in ourselves or in others around us, friends in the community, friends at church, watch for signs of aging. Just watch. There's no positive thing about being in denial. Little things like maybe spills on the floor because the coffee cup shakes a little more than it used to. Stacks of paper laying around in the house because it's just really hard to decide what to keep and what to throw away. Big things like medications mixed up, missing doctor's appointments. I have expired food written down here, but I really don't believe that one anymore. My daughters come over and empty my fridge about every month, and I'm like, oh, God, it's going to cost me more money when you throw that out. Sometimes, folks, my mom quit writing. You know, her signature got bad, and she quit writing, and she would ask me to sign things for her. Watch for all of those things. Maybe some weight loss. You know, one thing we talk about a lot is, and I do the same thing. If my husband's not home, it's easy to just grab a peanut butter English muffin or something for dinner. It's hard to cook and eat good food when you're alone. So companionship during meals is really huge. But if you see someone, you know, losing weight that's not trying to lose weight, you know, that might be a sign that things in their life aren't so good. So we can all watch for that in ourselves, in others. I'm really happy to be up here and be talking to you because there are times now, I'm 65, I'm younger than Dan, but there's times when that word that I want to say just doesn't want to come out. You know, there's a lot of normal signs of aging, so I don't want to panic you either. But there's a lot of normal signs of aging. But every time I'm going, to my girls, they're like, looking at me. I've obviously educated them a little bit too much for my liking right now. So watch for signs. Be helpful. Be helpful when you see those signs. Don't ignore them. Listen to those around you. Listen to those people that may be those caregivers that are starting to run out of patience. There's lots of clues. Someone might say, well, after work tonight, I have to go home and make dinner for my parents before I can go to my own family. I have to leave work this afternoon because I'm taking my mom to doctor's appointments. I can't go golfing this afternoon because my wife can't be alone. Or someone you run into in the grocery store that's like, I can't talk any longer because my husband's home alone and I have to get right home. I'm a little worried about car accidents in those kind of situations. Sometimes you see two people together and you ask questions and it's one person that always answers because the other one looks at them for the answers all the time. I think we've all seen that. And a big thing is if there's friends of yours that are disappearing, they're not coming to things anymore, they're isolating themselves, make sure that that family caregiver's doing okay. The most difficult thing I hear is, I just want to be the daughter again. I just want to go have dinner with my parents and enjoy conversation and not have to vacuum the floor and clean the bathroom and buy the groceries before I get there. Be aware of the clues that those family caregivers are giving us. Those family caregivers, they're a guilty crowd. Like my dad said, till death do I part, this is my job I promised. Another thing I hear is, she raised me, so I need to take care of her also. All of that is true. It's absolutely true. But that doesn't mean you're on the clock 24/7. When my kids were little, I got a babysitter once in a while. You need a break once in a while. You need to go do something for yourself, and you come back, and you're a much better caregiver. Family caregivers of the senior members of their family need the same things. It's amazing the percentage of family caregivers that become ill before the one they're taking care of. They don't go to their own doctor's appointments. They don't take time for their own exercise. They don't eat right, and the stress is phenomenal. Family caregivers need to take care of themselves. So, what can we do? First of all, show of hands. I should have asked this earlier. Anyone in here either a family caregiver or know of one or suspect they know of one? Yeah, that's what I thought. We all know. We all know. So, another hard conversation to have, a really hard conversation to have, but it's important to have it. There's lots of things to help. There are lots of resources out there, lots. Our world in the last 10 years has become abundant in resources because as we learned, as Mike and I learned several years ago, we have a lot of pride in running a wonderful nursing home in Brainerd. Bethany Good Samaritan was a beautiful home when we were there. And we have lots of pride in that, and people loved living there. But what they said was, still is fun to be at home. Still would be fun to be at home. So there's lots of resources out there. You're at an EXPO, for Pete's sake. There's lots of resources right outside this door and downstairs, I understand. There's lots of resources in your church. There's lots of resources in your community. This EXPO is a great example of the Cross Lake community really wanting to care for our aging people in this community, because we're the majority around here, right? Lots of resources here, lots of volunteer groups, lots of professional caregivers, lots of healthcare organizations there to support, a lot of education. The worst thing I've heard from family members is, I wish I would have known about this a long time ago. You don't start looking for information until you're in that situation. I really want to stop that. Let's be educated and look for that information now. There are lots of websites. I'm going to quote you a couple. I don't have a handout. I'm sorry. I'm old. I don't have a handout. I don't have a PowerPoint. I have a notebook. Websites, caregiverstress.com. Caregiverstress.com. It's an amazing website. I'm going to have a sheet out at our booth as soon as I'm done here and can get that sheet out there. And we can send you some information. If you would just like to sign up and give us your address or your email address, we can send you some information with these websites. Caregiverstress.com. Here's another crazy one that I don't know who named it. Help for Alzheimer's, plural, Alzheimer's families, plural.com. Help for Alzheimer's families.com. There's wonderful education. Now, it doesn't, it of course, talks about people with memory loss. I almost couldn't find my word there. Talks about people with memory loss, but there's a lot of caring that goes on that doesn't necessarily involve memory loss. Caregiverstress.com, help for Alzheimer's families.com, and I have to add homeinstead.com. Not for marketing for my company. That's not why I'm here. There's education on there that you can get, videos, all of those kinds of things. Same education that we give our caregivers who are out in the field caring for adults. caregiverstress.com, helpforalzheimerfamilies.com, and homeinstead.com. Educate yourself. And lastly, what do I want to say to those you family caregivers that are out there? Take care of yourself. You are a person also. Give yourself permission to figure out what works best for you, what balances your life, because I know you're not going to ignore that senior loved one that you're taking care of. Give yourself permission to feel okay that you're doing the best you can do. And reach out for help. No guilt. Reach out for help. At Home Instead, our tagline, like Dan mentioned, is "To us, it's personal." Hearing daughters say, "I just want to be the daughter again," and seeing my dad, seeing my dad be an awesome caregiver and then not. Family caregiving to me is very, very personal. Make it personal to you also. Thank you. There will be a sheet outside to sign up for more help. Our booth is right out the door. Forgive me for getting emotional. Take care of those family caregivers. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Another round of applause for Deb Cranny, please.
Thank
You get to get emotional. It's personal, right?